Great. So, hello, my name is Andrea Gonzalez. I am a city planner. I am working with Collabo Planning. We are the planning coordination. We are the planning coordinators of the Westward Choice Neighborhood Plan. And just as a little quick recap, the Choice Neighborhood Plan is a grant that the Greater Eastern Development Partnership, along with the Housing Authority and the city, won on 2018. So this grant actually is funding to conduct this study and to actually put it in paper, like what would prosperous, accessible, affordable, and everything good that we can think of for Easton, what would it look like and how do we make it happen? The difference with the choice neighborhoods is that it's not only housing focused or is not only economic development focused, it also includes a component for the people, So if you guys remember, you probably have met me when I've been walking around the West Ward doing some surveys for residents. So that's basically what we've been trying to do. We want to engage with residents. We want to learn what your experience living, working, growing up, going to school in Easton, what your experience has been like, and we want to hear what you need to make it better. What does better look like for you? So just as a quick recap, if you guys live, work, go to school in Easton, you are most familiar with this map. We have an area of about 1 square mile. We have approximately 10,000 residents in this very small radius. However, because of the topography and all the hills and the cliffs and the rivers, it actually feels like the area may be like way larger than 1 mile, right? So this is the area of focus. We have been conducting like site surveys to analyze what development opportunities we may have. And in this process, we started last year. We started with the listening and learning effort, which included the survey. Then we went through a couple of community meetings where we heard from the community. You probably remember us at the National Night Out event where we had an artist on site and the artist was drawing what she was hearing from the community conversations and from the attendees and from the residents. We were asking like, what does the future of the West Ward look like for you? From these exercises in listening and envisioning, we came up with a series of early action projects, and you currently can see the earliest interventions of our process. So at the Housing Authority apartments at the North Union side, as well as on Elm Street apartments, you can identify 4 little free libraries. Another site that we have is in the Bushkill House, where we will be developing a community garden initiative for the residents there. And right now we are right in the middle of year 1 and year 2, where we are in the process, in this collaborative process where we are engaging you, residents, you business owners, you community, to tell us what strategies, what programs, and what projects could be effectively used to make the Westward Choice neighborhood better. And then as this process that entails 3 meetings, this is the first of them, we will be refining what should our priorities be. And then eventually we're gonna put all this, the outcome of this working meetings, we're gonna put them in the draft plan. And eventually it's gonna be worked upon at the end of year 2 into an application for an implementation grant. So that's the timeline, and that's in very general terms what we're looking for here. Meanwhile, do you guys have any questions?
I have a question.
Go
So
ahead.
the grant you got, the $1.2 million, that was just to conduct the survey and come up with a plan, but that's not actually for application or implementation?
The implementation funds are separate from that grant. In the 1.2 millions there, that that we already got in the 1.2 million, there is some funding dedicated to early action projects. So the Little Free Library is the community garden, and we are currently planning a bigger project at Vanderveer Park that are going to be developing. However, this is not like the implementation. For implementation, there's a different pot of money that is not guaranteed. So that's why we are working on this plan so that we can use it towards the application of that.
Okay, so out of the 1.2 million, it's just for like the mini libraries and the public garden?
And the intervention at Vanderveer Park.
Okay, thank you.
I have a participant who raised her hand. Amy, how are you? Thanks for joining us today.
Good morning. Colleen, we do not, our grant for this planning process is $450,000, not 1.2. So I missed where that came into play, but 450,000 was for the planning grant. Yes. And then we have the possibility to apply for somewhere between 30 to 50 million for an implementation grant.
Got you. I think I just got that off of the Collabo website. So that's like all the information I have to work from.
Okay. Are you looking at our westwardeaston.org choice neighborhood page? Because that has pieces relevant to, specific to Westward.
Okay, yeah, it's the 1.2 million grant through the PA Neighborhood Assistance Program.
So that is for my Westward program as a whole. So
Okay.
the choice neighborhood planning grant is a totally separate grant, and that is the 450,000. So Colleen, while you're on that page, there is a separate page devoted to choice neighborhood that will talk specifically about this plan.
Okay, that's on their website too?
That's on our westwardeaston.org.
Okay, cool. Thank you for breaking that down.
Sure, sure. I didn't want you to think we had way more money than we do.
Yeah. Like, oh, for a park and a couple of mini libraries, that seems so crazy.
Yeah.
We're definitely not there yet, but yes, we are trying to make the best use of what we have. So thanks so much for your question. Why don't we go ahead with the rest of the presentation? So as part of the process, we identified 3 housing sites where we could possibly be issuing initial or where we could possibly be looking at some redevelopment and redesign. So the target sites that we identified are the apartments on North Union Street that has 57 units. It's multifamily housing, and it was built in the 60s. Our second sites are the Bushkill House, which houses senior and disabled residents, and it has 48 apartment units. And the apartments on Elm Street, that is a multifamily site with 55 units. So the way that this project, the way that this process works is that we are required to provide the same amount of housing units and then some. So this is a way that the program makes sure that no one gets displaced or no one gets put out of their home. On the contrary, by focusing on this needs assessment and the results that we are getting from our community engagement efforts, not only are the residents are going to be able to come back to their apartments or to newly renovated facilities, but also there's going to be enhanced communal facilities, and in addition to enhanced services and enhanced community assets. So for example, from the survey, we have been getting information that residents would like to have a cafe close by. They would like to have a grocery store within walking distance, right? So as part of this project, we are getting everyone together at the table in order to brainstorm and to identify how can we make this happen. So that's the process, and that's where we're at. Tonight is the last working group meeting We have been having these working group meetings throughout the week. We started with an equity and inclusion theme one. Then we went for one related to community health. Next, we did housing and business. Today in the morning, we had transportation and open space. And today we are focusing in art, history, and culture. So we are using, if you remember from the National Night Out event, this is the drawing that the artist drew on site live with everyone. And we scanned the huge drawing. This drawing took like an entire wall on the side of Paxinosa Elementary. So we scanned the drawing and we're gonna be writing with sticky notes on it, but we're gonna do it through Zoom. These are pictures of the sites. These are pictures of our community engagement. And I want to give a shout out to our ambassador, Brenda Williams, who is joining us on this call today and who has been instrumental in the success of this efforts. So thank you so much, Brenda, for joining us today. And thank you so much for continuing to work with us in this project. So without further ado, I am going to show you what our board looks like. If we were in real life, obviously this meeting would be in a community room or in some type of community place, right? You would see all these pictures on a board, probably several boards around the wall. And then this is where we would be participating with the sticky notes. And as you can see, we've been having these meetings all week. Each theme is color coded. So today we are focusing on the pink one or purple one, which is art, history, and culture. So when we are looking at participating, we are only going to focus on the pink writings that we see here. It does look a little cramped now. You're right. I got that comment from the chat because yes, we've been holding all these meetings all week, but it's great because we are getting and we are doing our best effort to capture all of the input from everyone in this meeting today. So I'm just gonna give you guys a really quick overview of what we got from the artist at our community engagement at the National Night Out. And then this is where we start the conversation. Does that sound okay to you guys? All right. So one of the first things that comes out is that people would like to see more block parties. They would like to see events that foster diversity. They want to, for example, a taco walk. They want to hold more block parties. And then they are wondering, how do we make this happen? Could we foster unity through arts? Art is very powerful. They want community walks. They want events that are inclusive of all ages. They want different type of events and gallery walks. They want to foster artists with diverse perspectives. They want more concerts. They want to use the cemetery as a public park, which I think is a great idea. They want to enhance the information for kids and teens related to LGBTQ. They want more art classes and more music programs, more art stuff in general, of course. They want more events because events bring people together. They attract others to come to town and they support business activity. They want to make Paxinosa as a community centerpiece. We have ideas for movie nights in the West Ward. They want public art in buildings. They want more murals and cultural events, more culture in general, and also they want to extend it outside of in general American culture. They want to open it to immigrant and foreign culture for Latino, Japanese, and Korean folk as well. They want special focus in kids. They definitely want a skate park, and they want a way to help younger generations understand history, art, and culture through museum. So how does it sound to you guys? Do you have additional thoughts? Where do you want to start the conversation? This is a moment where I would encourage everyone to open your mics. And why don't we start with introductions and then we tell what is our vision how does Better Easton, how does a better project in the West Ward look like? I can start calling folks to join as I see them on my participant list. So Colleen, do you want to start?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Colleen O'Neill. I live in the West Ward. I'm an artist, curator, and educator. And I guess looking at this map that was created about arts, history, and culture, my biggest concern is making sure that a decolonized approach towards history is focused on, as well as not art washing the West Ward for gentrification purposes.
Great comment. I love that. Thank you so much for bringing that up, Colleen. Next, Amy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I think I know everybody here. Amy Bacadoro from the West Ward Community Initiative. I am that manager of that program. So nice. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I'll let the conversation go before I can jump in with any answers to questions or updates on things that are going on in the neighborhood. So.
Thanks, Amy. We have Matt Leska.
Hello, my name is Matt Laska. I live in the West Ward, and when I look at this, I don't have a particular perspective on on the end product really, but when I see something like this, I think that in any big project, it's a lot of small steps executed on time and well, and if a person can develop those skills to perform one of those steps, then they can start a business, they can be a good employee, like they can be a valuable employee, and they can really offer value. And I think that whether you're building something or designing something or organizing something, that developing those opportunities to build skills and to work locally would be a really valuable thing for this, so that you don't just get the end product, you also get people who, number one, were involved in the project, and number two, use it as a springboard for something else.
Thank you so much for your comment, Matt. That's very, very, very important. I strongly agree. Next, we have Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, everyone. Liz Rosen. My husband and I are landlords of 2 buildings in the West Ward, and have very much wanted to be part of that revitalization and turning those buildings around so that they look better and people want to live there again. So I think it's more important for me to be listening to what residents here say that they want. I do have some questions about some of the ideas that are here, like the public concerts and events to bring people together sound really great. I do have questions about which locations everybody sees those kinds of things happening, something that's big enough. I mean, in the downtown area, oftentimes we can shut down Center Square and use that as a place. I don't know of a place that's similar. Is Paxinosa what people are thinking about to use the school grounds?
Andrea, I'm happy to answer.
Yes, go ahead, Amy. Thanks so much.
Yeah, Liz, you're so right. We lack a large gathering space in the neighborhood. We have been using right now 12th Street between Paxinosa and Cottingham Stadium. And that has been a fantastic place to hold events. We are actually looking towards having an open air food market there this summer. So that would be the site for that. And Paxinosa has been an excellent partner with us, and we've been allowed to use school grounds for certain things. We've also, the school district has with the rehab at the stadium, they are allowing people into the stadium, so we can use that as another alternate space. And we are really excited to be working on the Vanderveer Park, which is immediately behind Cottingham Stadium, to create a much larger green space, which is just, the openness is what is needed. And that's probably 2 years down the road for a full completion, but that's what we're looking towards. And so I think some of those other pieces between Paxinosa and 12th Street and the stadium can fill in the interim while Vanderveer is underway. Also, Centennial Park has just had 2 properties adjacent to it raised, and that is looking to be a much larger park space as well. So those are what we're looking towards. We have some short-term and then long-term possibilities in the future. But yes, it is extremely challenging to find something that we can bring everybody to, and it's, you know, a nice space to want to come to as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just add to that part of what I see as a landlord in the area that would really help is the streetscape itself, just having more trees as well, and benches of places to sit so that people aren't sitting necessarily on their front steps that are leading down right into the sidewalk, as opposed to a stoop like on Northampton Street. So I think that any discussion about greening the West Ward is really going to be helpful.
Strongly agree. Thank you so much for your comment, Elizabeth. What you're saying actually kind of overlaps with the meeting we had today in the morning related to transportation and open space. If you're interested, please follow up by email with me. And I am happy to send you an invitation to join the transportation and open space planning, because we were having as well a really wonderful discussion about how to bring people out, how to activate the streetscape. And you're right. I really think that we cannot approach any of these issues right now just in a silo or in a vacuum. Like, we need to be thinking of an integral approach of how do we get all the gears turning in the same direction.
Thanks, Andrea.
So thanks, Elizabeth. Next is Brenda. Hi, Brenda. It's so great to see you.
Hi, I'm Brenda Williams. I'm one of the ambassadors, and I'm an artist as well, so this really means a lot to me. I'd like to tap into a lot of the hidden talent in the West Ward and bring that out and sort of beautify our community. In doing so, I think that's going to bring a lot of people together, and it would give people a sense of belonging and feeling like this is really our community, because they're working towards making it a nicer community through the arts, through getting together for block parties, through public concerts. So I'm really interested in a lot of these things that are going on here.
Thanks, Brenda.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we got Bob, State Rep Bob Freeman.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Bob Freeman, the state representative for the Easton area. I serve in the Pennsylvania legislature. And I grew up in the West Ward. Spent most of my years in the West Ward. Although my wife and I now live on College Hill, I still own the family home on South 10th Street, which is 3 units. My brother lives in one. And I have a real connection and a real desire to see the West Ward succeed. It's where I grew up. And it's a great place. I think one of the things that the West Ward has going for it too is its tremendous diversity. And I'd like to see us celebrate that diversity more. It was always diverse growing up to some extent, but even more so now. And particularly with the Latino community having a very prominent place in the West Ward, and the diversity of that community. You know, I think a lot of people don't realize how diverse that community is in terms of places of origin, and that brings different cultural aspects to the table in terms of food and celebrations and all that. I think one of the ways to make the West Ward more user-friendly for a lot of people too is to celebrate that diversity through cultural events. You know, whether it's a festival day or whether it's a block party, it's a way to bring neighbors together and a way to bring people from outside the neighborhood in to dispel any misconceptions they have in the West Ward and actually see how wonderful a place it can be. I'm also interested in seeing the arts to be promoted more. And I think there's a wonderful opportunity with the students at Paxinosa to be able to do that and to really reach them in terms of artistic endeavors, and to also promote an understanding and appreciation of the history of the West Ward. I've been able to lead some historic walks in downtown Easton over the last year. It's been a great experience, I think, for those who participated, and I've enjoyed it as well. But the West Ward also has a very important history, a story to be told. And I think it's incumbent upon us to promote those kind of walks or celebrations of its history so that people feel grounded and connected to the neighborhood in which they live.
Thank you so much, Bob. A great, great, great comment. And I strongly, strongly agree. Next, we have Tanya.
Hi everyone, my name's Tanya Ruiz. I am the new assistant manager of the Westward Community Initiative, so I'm working directly with Amy. I'm also a Westward resident. I love Easton and the Westward. We bought a home here a year and a half ago, so I am just so excited about the direction that the Westward and Easton is going in, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Great to have you, Tanya, and congrats on purchasing your home. Next, we have Laura Faye.
Hi, my name's Laura Faye. I was a business owner for a long time in Easton. I opened up Separatist Beer Project and owned it and ran it for about 5 years. And I'm just interested in the West Ward just because I think it's an awesome neighborhood. And I want to help in any way that I can. And having like experience in retail spaces, I think I could help somewhat like in, gathering place, creating like gathering places for artistic or stuff to happen or concerts and things like that.
Wonderful. Great to have you, Laura. Holly Hauser, you're next.
Hello, I'm Holly. I am a Westward resident. Bought our house in 2009 or 2010, so it's been a while. And, living in the Westward this long, having my kids and raising them here, community definitely means a lot to me. I am a 4th grade teacher and also was working as education program coordinator at the Sigel Museum. So I definitely have an interest in history and culture. So I, have a lot of experience developing programs. And I think that for this particular topic, creating a strong ongoing series of events and calendar of events is going to be really important. I think art can help draw art, history, culture, and events can kind of help draw attention. There's so many businesses and restaurants in the West Ward that people don't know about. So trying to leverage art, history, and culture to make those things and those places and those resources more known, I think could be a really interesting angle to take. And I think, overall, just my general impression of the West Ward is it's like this wonderful, chaotic place, kind of. There's so many houses, there's so many different styles, there's so much happening, and it can be visually overwhelming. And I think if we look at ways to embrace that and make it a feature instead of making it just feel like, sometimes you go to the West Ward, it feels like a mess sometimes. But messes can be beautiful and engaging and interesting. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to embrace what's here and, what makes it energetic and exciting and unique.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Holly. That's a really, really, really great opinion. I love to hear it. Next, we have G.H. Dennis.
Hi, it's pronounced Jen, like Jennifer. Yeah, no, that's cool. I live in the West Ward, and I'm a property owner. In addition to living in the West Ward, I'm a landlord, I guess. Landlord's a weird word. I'm a professor of media studies, and I have a deep background in working in community media art centers, including Squeaky Wheel in Buffalo, New York.
I'm from Buffalo.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You're from Buffalo?
Yeah.
Okay. So Squeaky Wheel and Hollow. Right on. So I was the program director there for a while. I'm also presently the artistic director of the New York State Summer School for Media Arts, which is a New York statewide program for high school students each summer. It's an intensive. And so I sort of have a vision of a space in the West Ward that would function like Squeaky Wheel did in Buffalo. So what Squeaky Wheel is a community art center where you can provide technical training. And by training, you know, there's a creative bent to it. It's not completely industrial, right? So a program, for example, Tech Arts for Girls, where young junior high and high school girls learn how to code, learn how to operate software. But also we had general community workshops open to the community, also focused on youth at risk, homeless LGBTQ, shelter, doing workshops and in video production. And then there was a sort of like return on that in the sense that these adults and students and high school and middle school students would create work that would then be screened at the space, right? So there would be screenings of local video and film and sound artworks, and then also curated events where films would be screened also in the space. And in addition to films, poetry readings, music, performance, and a sort of general space where these kinds of artistic things can happen. And another sort of thing that was exceptional about Squeaky Wheel was that the community could also curate events. So if somebody wanted to show a particular film or to organize a particular kind of exhibition, do a workshop in, say, poetry or writing or filmmaking, and then they could, you know, sort of supplement that with work from the outside. So it's sort of like creating a dialogue with the community and the art world sort of nationally in a way. And that could also function, you know, I often drive past the, what's that place that they put in all those horrible windows? Jacob's Produce. So like Jacob's Produce could be this, you know, this place with a lot of space to show work and that's open to the public, that also then has these sorts of classrooms and workshop spaces, you know, something sort of that functions, I guess, as a museum in a kind of a way. I see that comes up in the chart here, where work from the outside can come in and interact, and then artists from the outside come in and do workshops with the community, adults and children as well. So that's sort of what I'm after.
That's great to hear, Jen. Thank you so much for your input. And I think that everybody right now has like this really wonderful idea, and the whole purpose of this board is to try to start working all these ideas towards the same direction. So yes, thank you so much for your input. And last but not least, we have Joseph O'Neill. Oh, and Miranda.
Hi. Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I wasn't sure I was registering there. Yes, I'm Joseph O'Neill. I'm an artist, and my wife Colleen, who spoke earlier, and I own a home here. In addition, I also have an art studio in the neighborhood as well. Yeah, to piggyback a little bit on what Jen said, and also Bob a little earlier, I think an artist mentor program would be a great idea for this neighborhood. Pairing, to call back Bob, possibly students from Paxinoso that show an interest in art, and pairing them with local working artists. And to call back a little bit to what Jen said, you know, it provides them not only an opportunity to connect with the art community here in Easton, but also an international art community. And that, you know, kind of conversation, opening up the way they see the world, and then they can bring that back here to the community. And in addition, also gets their family and social networks involved with the art scene here, and, you know, just kind of a good way to foster good community at large.
Great. Thank you so much, Joseph. That's a great idea.
Can I jump in here for just
one more thing?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry. Joseph, yeah, I think like Joseph makes a really good point about a mentorship program. And I think one thing that can ground all of these moving parts is a space, right? So you have a space where students can come and the artists meet there. And there's a place where with working tables and computers and projections and there's a location, a central location where these different things happen. And I think without that, these other ideas about concerts and community events kind of dissipate into the ether. And I just really think it's important to have like a physical space where these exchanges happen. And even kids could even drop in and hang out and make stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, I completely agree. Physical spaces, fostering art and community are paramount, particularly, in neighborhoods like this. So yeah, couldn't agree more, Jen.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks both for your comments. Miranda, I don't want to leave you out of the introduction round.
Hi guys, I'm Miranda. I work for GEDP. I oversee our community gardens, and I'm a West Ward resident. I live on Walnut Ave. Hi Liz. Anyway, so with the community gardens, I mean, I have a vested interest because I'd love for them to be spaces of gathering, to foster creativity and be a cultural sort of space. So I'm excited to maybe be a part of that in that way. And then I loved what Brenda said about seeing local artists. It's great to just hear and meet so many people that live in my neighborhood that, I mean, not to, have it on a personal note, but I'd love to learn from you guys. So the mentorship project sounds great. But yeah, and I guess in the same way, I would feel so interested in living in a space to have local West Ward artists be featured all over the space and have them be paid for their work as well. I know that's something in the art community that, becomes, I don't know, just expected or, I don't know, unpaid. So anyway, I'd like to see that. And I also liked Colleen's point about promoting socially just initiatives and history through art. So just here to say those sounded really cool and I'm excited to be involved.
Thank you very much, Miranda. Thank you so much. So I think that this was a really, really great first round of initial thoughts. And now, if you don't mind my asking, I think that I feel that we're missing an important institution in this board. Lafayette College is not anywhere here to be mentioned, and I am wondering if you guys think that they could possibly be an asset, if they have shown any interest or any will in having community-driven events, or I am not familiar with them, but I wonder if they have artists or art programs. Maybe they can participate in like coming out.
I think you're right. I think that's a great resource to draw on. And in the past, there have been interns from Lafayette that have done work in the West Ward, taking surveys, interacting with neighbors. And of course, there's great resources at the college in terms of the arts. The Buck Center down on 3rd Street for motion pictures. You've got various other artistic endeavors and music venues that the college could help with. So yeah, I think they'd be very open to being approached and getting kids to intern in whatever we would try and promote in the way of arts, history, or culture.
Wonderful. Colleen, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, in response to Lafayette, I don't know them very well. I've gone to some programming there, and I've met some of the instructors and professors there. I just do worry that like the West Ward could become like a place that's studied by Lafayette, but not actually like having any interaction or trying to lead the way that the West Ward should be in their eyes, instead of like allowing it to be community first. So those are my concerns about working with such a large institution. But if they're addressed, like, I think they could possibly be helpful.
That's a super, super valid concern, Colleen. You're totally right. I think that what Jen was saying about these events and these initiatives being community led has to be paramount, and then inviting like an additional institution. Elizabeth raised her hand, and then Holly. You're on mute. Or we can't hear you. No, it's not working. Do you want to write it on the chat?
How about now?
Yes, wonderful. Thanks so much.
So I have a more immediate concern than Lafayette's participation or not participation. I think they've got deep pockets, and I think it's great to get them involved in things. But I do understand Colleen's hesitance about that. My more immediate concern is that one of the things that we are talking about is diversity and holding that up. I don't think this doesn't look like a very diverse committee. So I would like to see some additional people on it who represent other ethnicities and residents, so that we have that feedback and participation.
Thank you so much for that. I am a daughter of an immigrant family, and what you're saying really, really resonates, and I strongly agree with you. So thank you so much for keeping that in mind. Holly, you were next.
Yeah, if we're talking about other institutions that may want to be involved, Lafayette is very involved with a lot of things, especially downtown. But I would say the Sigel Museum and the Easton Public Library are both important resources that we should keep in mind. Sigel Museum is downtown, but they are Northampton County History Museum. And the Easton Public Library is technically in the West Ward on Church Street, I believe. I'm not sure.
Yes, it is on Church Street.
Yeah, so I don't know if that counts as the West Ward or if it's too far onto the other side of the street. But I definitely want to make sure that we would keep them in the loop. They have a huge amount of people that utilize their services, and they're also often forgotten about up there on the hill.
Thanks so much for your comment. You're totally right. We should start with what is close to us and what is already there instead of bringing things from outside. Great. I missed out a couple comments on the chat, so give me 1 second. I need to back up just to make sure, that I'm not missing anything. When does the transportation group meet? So the next meeting is going to be February 24th, and please send me an email and I can invite you to the transportation meeting. Where are the residents living while we are rebuilding and redesigning and renovating? There is a relocation plan for that. We are not there yet, but the system is in place so that no one actually loses their home. That's the final goal. And if you want to follow up after this conversation, I can give you details about how the relocation plan works. There's a church for sale near 11th Street too. Actually, a great example related to a church for sale in Buffalo was that there was a church in downtown Buffalo that was bought by an artist because the church was in such disrepair, like pretty much someone was giving it away, and an artist decided to buy the church, and now the church became an art and performing arts center. So I think that we do have the assets, like for example, a church would be a really, really great like art performance space, for example. I don't know, unless anyone opposes this, if it could be worked into the implementation budget, that would probably be a really great idea. Or well, I don't know, because I see Jen talking, but she's on mute.
I don't know how to raise my hand any other way, sorry. As far as like just bringing it back to Squeaky Wheel and Righteous Babe and the church is an awesome sort of model, I think. It would, you know, Ani DeFranco, I mean, it was private money, but you know, that's one model. And I think bring it back to Squeaky Wheel and other even smaller organizations in Buffalo as a model, like pulling in funding. Laura and I were talking about this afternoon, that if you know, if you have your finger on the pulse of, say, like Lafayette's doing a Middle Eastern Institute and got funding to bring in artists and create curriculum and bring in writers and things, we can tap into that. And then in the West Ward at our location, right, we host one of those writers reading, or one of those artists exhibiting, or one of those filmmakers screening, and pull in the financial resources from Lafayette College and, you know, the organization in the West Ward to supplement sort of the budget, if you will. So my experience of running Squeaky Wheel, we were getting national endowment grants for visiting artists and artist residencies, pulling in local and national artists to do workshops with the community that then would tap into something that the English department, a poet that the English department at Lafayette is bringing in, or some other artist, and doing some collaborative things that aren't taking place on the campus, but are participating with things that are happening on campus. And then there's some crossover with the participation of things that are happening in the West Ward. So there's a kind of interaction. But I think that I just keep bringing it back to like having a space in the West Ward that can raise its own money through arts funding and other kinds of grant writing, and then also tap into different smaller institutions around Easton, including Lafayette, to kind of create that flow.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your comment, Jen. That's like very, very, very specific. And I wonder, because I actually don't live in Easton. I'm located in Philadelphia. So I wonder if there's an arts organization or another local institution that we're missing and that we should probably bring to the table. I'm wondering. And we don't have to have all the answers right now, but just to start thinking about it. Holly, you raise your hand.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback and, you know, I just say how great of an idea I think it is having an arts, history, culture kind of center in the West Ward. And it seems, you know, we have community center, we have Paxenosa, which is a community school. There's so many resources, but this is a you know, need that's not being met. Additionally, it's a place that could be accessible for everyone. You know, not everyone is going to be aware of what's going on at Paxenosa if they don't have kids there, or, you know, people who want to get out in the community but don't have enough money to go out to eat, or don't want to go to a bar, or aren't old enough to go to a bar. You know, there's not a lot of options for people who are like in that young adult age. So I think this could be really great for that. And I like, you know, I just love the idea of there being so many uses for this one space. And a friend and I, she had a wonderful idea to set up a creative reuse center. And we had been kind of going through all kinds of plans and met with Amy, hooked us up with a business like mentoring program. And the sticking point was finding space. And, you know, we have all the ideas and can manage the process of running a creative reuse center and doing programming, but neither of us are either willing to or able to take on finding a location for something like that. And the worry that we would fail because our expenses for finding a property and maintaining a property or paying rent for something that essentially is not going to make a ton of money because you're just recycling garbage into useful things for other people and giving them that same workspace where they can come and do the work and make something creative if they don't have the ability to do that in their apartment or their house. Having a place like this where we could say, all right, we're going to have some of this space and utilize it, and we can run workshops where kids can tinker and make stuff out of random springs and loose parts, and they can come and work on their school projects and reports without needing to buy anything. And we could have furniture upcycling. It's just the possibilities are limitless, but the logistics are hard. So again, having a space in the West Ward that's dedicated to having those kinds of things available for a huge variety of people, I think would be amazing.
Thank you so much for your comment, Holly. I strongly agree. Finding a space is probably the greatest challenge in an environment that is as built in as the West Ward, and then funding, and then finding the expertise to run the program like consistently. So yes, that's why we are all here, because we are brainstorming ideas. And then in the next 2 meetings, we are going to work towards the priorities. And then on the last meeting, then we would be trying to really get them into paper with an idea and the expected outcome. So let's keep the ideas flowing. Am I missing anyone that raised their hand? I am reading the comments. The address of the church that is on sale is 1120 Butler. Anyone wants to buy it? I if I had the money, I would be buying it right now because all of these ideas sound really great.
Andrea?
Yes, go ahead, Bob.
Okay. Yeah, I think the idea of getting a facility that's embedded in the West Ward and could serve as an arts center is a great one. I think it would really anchor the neighborhood and give a real focus to it, and afford a lot of opportunity for a whole array of arts and cultural activities. You had mentioned other groups that we might want to approach or partner with. And I mention this cautiously because they have not been known to engage in the West Ward, but they have some real assets and a great facility. And that's the State Theater for the Performing Arts. I think in the past, they have tended to be this wonderful performing arts center, which opens up with a show maybe once a week or once every other week. They bring people in from the outside, people who might dine downtown, go to the theater, and then leave. But they did have a program which I really liked, and I think it was cut short by the pandemic. But they used to have a summer theatrical school for kids of all ages. I mean, literally kids in elementary school into the teen years. And I don't know how much they reached into the West Ward to get kids engaged in that program. But if they started up again once the pandemic recedes, I'd like to see them have a focus on reaching out to the families of the West Ward to make sure they're included. There were a lot of kids in that program who came from suburban or more affluent families, but I think there's probably a real opportunity for kids in the West Ward to be exposed to theater, theatrical training, and to see the beauty of the inside of the State Theater is very inspiring. So if they start the program up again, I'd like to see us collaborate with them to reach into the families and kids of the West Ward and get them involved. And the State Theater is only about a block east of the neighborhood. It's on 5th and Northampton. So just a thought.
That's really great to hear, Bob. I think that that's great feedback, and absolutely, it's an opportunity that we should totally look into. I see someone raised their hand, and Jen has her hand up too. One moment, because I can't see everyone at the same time. Matt, in the interest of you haven't participated yet, go ahead, and then Jen.
Okay, hi, thank you again. Holly, I wanted just to follow up on something that you said, and not only to disagree. I think having a central location is a great idea, but why not make money out of it? Like, why not do things that that drive revenue. You know, it doesn't have to just be tinkering. And that's one thing that I think is often lost in these kinds of projects is we think, oh, we're just amateurs, we don't know what we're doing, we're not pros. It doesn't matter. If you can sell it, do it. And then I think that a project with a scope like this has so many different little parts of it where there are opportunities for young people in particular to develop a skill that fills a need and that generates money. And that the money part of it is what's going to keep them interested. And I think it's such an important thing to realize that, like, now, not to go on and on about this, but now the manufacturing capabilities that we have just on my computer that I'm staring at as I'm talking to you are out of control. Like the tooling that's available to us is unbelievable. And there's lots of opportunities to use that.
Thank you so much for your comment. I think that where your mind is also an opportunity that we should keep in mind. So thank you so much for that. Jen, did you have a comment?
I was just going to follow up on the idea of, like, are there arts organizations in the West Ward that we can reach out to? And I think that what needs to happen is that we need to make the art organization, right? Whether that's create a 501c3, start building that as a sort of scaffolding or foundation for something. And then, you know, we don't, I appreciate what you said, Matt, but also, like, you know, through you know, national granting and local granting, I think that the Art Center itself could be sustainable. And also someone mentioned, you know, getting artists paid, right? So that when people show their work, they get money, and not necessarily they sell it, but that they get a stipend, and mentors get stipends, and the local artists who are participating get stipends. I think that working with the State Theater is well and good, but I just want to say it for the 100th time that we need a space in the West Ward that has its own sort of authenticity and its own agency, and can also then integrate into these other organizations around Easton outside of the West Ward. But that we need to maybe create the arts organization ourselves.
Thank you, Jen. Absolutely. I got that on the board with all caps. Matt and Holly, you raise your hand.
Sorry, I think I did that accidentally.
No problem.
I'll just jump in. I have had a Pinterest board of community art projects for the West Ward for at least 6 years. And I have the best name, I think. You might all think I'm crazy, but it's Warts, because so many people think the West Ward is like the ugly part of Easton. And if you do WWARTS, it's West Ward Arts. And I think it's hilarious.
I love it. Thank you so much for that. Wow. We really are brainstorming here. I totally love it. Are we missing something? Anyone else wants to jump in? I see that the chat is blowing up and I'm having a little bit of trouble keeping up with everything. Everyone is agreeing with what Jen said. Artists need to be paid for their works. And yes, artists should be paid for their creativity. And a lot of people are agreeing with Jen. And yes, people are agreeing that utilizing art and the technical components of it as business opportunities is an opportunity that shouldn't be missed. And also someone mentioned that because people have other jobs, it doesn't mean that they are not interested in art. And that is also very true. How about having a shuttle that gets residents of the West Ward to the outdoor market or the other events? I think that idea is also very interesting, and we should also explore how do we get people out, or where are the places that people need to go in order to engage in these activities. Colleen, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I just have a question. I know that you're going to be applying for the implementation funds now. So would there be a way to dog ear some of those funds to be like seed or incubator funds for a space like this, where there's like money put into it, so that if there's a space that nonprofits can open and work in, and arts organization forms within the West Ward, we don't want it to be like sold out from under us because property value goes up, or we're not able to maintain like payments on it. So would we be able to dog ear some money like to purchase a place for the community?
Just from the top of my head, my answer is yes. However, I am not totally familiar with the technical aspect of the ties that the money comes with. I don't know if Amy has more details. And really, in all of our development plans and what results from these working meetings, and the whole purpose is to have what am I saying? Mixed use buildings. So we're not only going to be building apartments, we're going to be building things that are going to support the community as a whole. However, I am not sure, art spaces are like very, very specific sizes. They have very, very specific technical requirements as well, like performance spaces and all that. So I am not sure if we could specifically earmark funds for an arts venue. I know for a fact that mixed use commercial redevelopment is gonna be in the future, is like our greatest ambition probably, but I am not sure if it would include a space of that scale of those specific needs. I don't know if Amy has further details about this.
Colleen, I do know that there's additional grant funding that could help fund larger projects like this that are community and neighborhood based. I think since you're looking for it to be run by, as Jen said, starting your own arts organization, it would be great if you had ducks in a row that made you a 501c3 or something of the like, so that if we could purchase a building through this project, it would have a direct recipient and someone that would be able to take it over. Not so much that we buy a building and then there's no one that can move forward with plans. So we would really want that. So being able to say we have a partner, we have this nonprofit, we have this arts group that is going to be the steward of that and move forward with what we're looking at, that would be the way to go. So those are things to definitely think about and start forming if you see this as a reality. The other piece too, like Andrea mentioned, is that we're starting with these architectural designs and there is space for community and commercial use. And so maybe they don't fulfill all your wish lists, but they could also be a piece to do certain things there too, if you don't have that, entity set. So, but those are pieces that could be part of that kind of programming too.
Thanks for your reply, Amy.
Thank you.
And thanks for your question, Colleen. Holly, you raise your hand.
Yeah, Amy, I was just wondering if there's the possibility of GDP being able to head up, or Westward Neighborhood Initiative being able to run it and then, write in funding to hire someone to manage it. So that way it has a parent and then there can be someone hired to run the, building, the organization, whatever.
I don't know about that, Holly. That would be an executive director kind of concept. I don't know that. I don't know how that winds up fitting with our missions and things that we've done through GEDP. So that would have to be kind of considered if that's like a right fit for a spinoff, kind of entity that way.
Thanks, Amy, for your response. Anyone else wants to jump in with questions or comments?
I'd like to back it up in the chat box there where Joseph said that there's, Joseph, you'd be able to speak to it more about the building you're referencing and the artist space. I mean, I don't know anything about that, so that sounded exciting. As we're all talking about needing a congregation space for the arts, that might be kind of cool to see what's already happening over there, even if it is a small scale, like you said. So I'd like to hear more about that.
Sure. So yeah, the space is on 1120 Butler. I think there's around 14 to 16 artists working out of there now. That's where my studio is. So yeah, there's around 14 to 16 artist studios there, and a small gallery space. You know, I think they would be open to doing some community-based things. But it's, you know, it's more of a space where, you know, people are working on their work. But that being said, I know that there's a desire to get, you know, some more community involvement there. As someone who works out of there, I would love to see some more community involvement. I'd love to, you know, have, you know, more kids and families from the community drop in and interact with the artists there. But yeah, so it can be an asset, but, you know, it's certainly not the, you know, the golden swan, so to speak, that's needed here.
What's the name of the organization, Joseph, or what's the name of the art studio, or the name where everyone's under there?
Sure, it's 1120 Studios.
Oh, that's his name, 1120 Studios. Okay.
Yep.
And Andrea, it's privately owned by two business partners who have, you know, put this together. So they don't have a collective arts name, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Thank you so much for that. I think that it's really, really great feedback and input to see that there's already like some of it happening. We haven't talked a lot about cultural events. We only brushed a little bit upon the idea of cultural specific events, and I wonder how do you guys think that would be received? Have you guys been in other cities where they do like a I don't know, like a Hispanic Heritage Month, for example? Do you guys think that is that happening already in Easton? Do you guys think that it could possibly be successful in the future? Yes, Colleen.
I think that things like that could totally be successful, but with, like, again, I forget who said it, but we have so few people in this meeting that it's really hard for just these few people to speak for the whole community. So I really think more outreach and more accessible meetings would be helpful in deciding and planning those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Andrea, there has been an annual Hispanic festival down at the Two Rivers. So it's more downtown centered. I don't know how much of it's Easton based, how much of it is just the general Hispanic community of the Lehigh Valley. Music and arts and food have been the focus down there. And I believe it goes on an annual basis. Amy might have more information in that regard. But it'd be great to have something like that actually in the West Ward itself and draw on the West Ward community to make it a West Ward event.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for that. Okay. Yes, it would be really great if we could reach more diverse community members. Are you aware if there is like a Hispanic Business Association or and I am just jumping straight to Hispanic because that's the ethnicity that I identify with. But I wonder are there other groups that are represented in the community and they are not here?
I'm not aware of an African-American group in the Easton area. There might be, but there's none that I'm actually aware of.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
You do have a well-established NAACP chapter. A lot of its members are based on the South Side, but that's a great connection for the African American community in Easton.
And Andrea, there's also a Hispanic branch of the Chamber of Commerce. And Bob, to your point, I think they are the ones who are instrumental in putting on the Hispanic Cultural Day in downtown.
There's the
Yeah,
Hispanic Center of the Lehigh Valley as well, which is located in Bethlehem.
There's another community that's semi-invisible at this point, but I think is connected to the West Ward one way or another. There's a mosque on South 10th Street, actually right across from the family home that I own. And I don't know where most of the members come from in terms of the greater Easton area, but it's a great center. They had an open house before the pandemic, which was well attended by a lot of people from Easton. And it was a way of introducing a different religion and a different culture to the people of Easton. And I don't know if they actually engage that much in Westward activities, but given its central location, a great facility, it used to be St. Mark's UCC Church before it was sold to the mosque. It'd be nice to reach out to them and see if they would like to engage more in the neighborhood and allow us to use their facility for various things.
Absolutely, or have them present at events that are already happening. Like I think that one of the assets in Easton's identity is like all the really cute events about Garlic Fest and Bacon Fest and National Night Out. Like if we could have as well representation and interest from all these diverse groups, so that they also feel included, I think that it would be also a huge step on the right direction. So yes, I strongly encourage that.
And one of the things about the various houses of worship that exist in the West Ward, there's quite a few actually. Many of them have community rooms. So we shouldn't overlook that as an asset that can help with meetings or even some of the artistic stuff we've talked about this evening. And they're dispersed throughout the West Ward. There's probably, Amy, I would defer to you, but I would assume there's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe a dozen houses of worship. Some are not occupied right now, but many are still active. And that's a great asset to tap into.
Absolutely. Totally right. And another thing is that usually houses of worship, like families like grow up in them for generations. So they actually like would be really great in the theme of like history, because like if a family has been going to the same church like from their parents and now the grandkids are going there too, like it really talks about like that sense of belonging, and it's an opportunity of engagement and building as well. So it's a really great idea. Thank you. Yes, Colleen, you raise your hand, and Holly.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Holly, for letting me go. I was just thinking about the Westward Community Center. I know that there's a lot. Or is that the Westward, or is it the Easton area Community Center? So I know that there's like a lot of kids activities there. So maybe starting to connect with kids and their parents who are using that space already and bringing them into the conversation could be really helpful. And then again, off of Freeman's discussion about the houses of worship, it could also be a place where we could hold events.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, that's a great idea. So I'm not sure if it's the Easton Community Center or the Westward Community Center. So we're gonna have to check unless someone knows the answer.
It's the Easton area community center.
Excellent.
Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's a great facility and a lot of youth programming.
Wonderful. Then Holly, you raise your hand.
Yeah, just thinking about other organizations to be in touch with. Lehigh Valley Engaged Humanities Consortium. I'm not sure if that is directly tied to a Mellon grant that Lafayette received, and they organized and ran this Engaged Humanities Consortium, and it is coming to an end, or if it's something that's going to continue. But that, when I was working at the museum, was a wonderful resource for finding partners, for programming, for funding, for grant writing, and it's right in the wheelhouse of what we're talking about doing here. Amy, I don't know if you know if that's folding once that Mellon grant is finished or not.
Yeah, that I don't know of, Holly. I lost track of that after kind of after that kickoff piece. So
Yeah, me too, after I changed jobs.
Great, we'll keep it in mind for our future engagements. Brenda, you're raising your hand and you're on mute.
I was wondering if speaking of houses of worship, if we could pull in some of maybe the pastors or the heads of some of these churches to help with further diversity. Especially here in the West Ward, to get them to come to some of these meetings, participate in some of these meetings. If that's something that we could do, maybe pass out flyers to their churches to make them aware of that we're even having these meetings.
Definitely. Thank you
we
so
can
much.
do that, Brenda. I have contact with at least half of them. So yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. So we are on the last 10 minutes of this meeting. Are we missing something? Does anyone have an idea that you've been holding on? Or even if you're not sure how to make it happen, even if it sounds crazy, right now we're in this stage where we're brainstorming or things that we have seen in other cities that we have seen work, and anything comes out to play today. So don't hold up. We are in the last 10-ish minutes of the meeting, and don't be shy. And then we go from here. Colleen, go ahead.
All right, I'm not being shy tonight. So one thing that I think could be really helpful is, oh my goodness, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, all of this stuff that we're talking about doing, all of these things that we want to do, like I think focusing not only on like the environment and like also focusing on like wastewater, all of that's going down through the sewers, so cleaning up the space a little bit, like getting garbage off the streets would be helpful, and out of those waterways, but also creating jobs. So all of these things that are going to be built, that are going to be expanded on or thought about, like I think focusing on creating jobs for people within the West Ward should be a main priority.
Yeah, I'd just like to comment on that. I think that's got to be a major focus. The employment opportunities are limited in the West Ward, and I think it would really help a lot of families if there was more in the way of job opportunities. When I was growing up as a kid in the West Ward, there were a lot of people who actually lived and worked in the West Ward. There were a number of textile companies, very small, usually in the back alleys, and they employed roughly 100 seamstresses and tailors in each of them. And there were more stores and businesses that employed people who lived in the West Ward. And I think that can serve as a great anchor to the neighborhood too. If people are living but also working and shopping in the West Ward, it creates a connectivity, which adds stability and adds connections to their neighbors. And so I think that needs to be an important element as we move forward.
Definitely. Matt, you raise your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, and just to follow up on those, the last two speakers, this is what I do. Is I make stuff and I go to the farmer's market and I sell it. And I make stuff and I go to the Winter Village and I sell it. And I go to the Garlic Festival and I sell it. And those are real opportunities. And I think it's often overlooked. Those are real opportunities for people in the West Ward to go and, to make a product or make a piece of art or make something that they believe in. There's a built-in audience to sell it, to whom, you can sell that product. Thank you.
Definitely. Thanks, Matt, for your comment. You're totally right. I think that all of these ideas are great, and it's fantastic that all of you guys are keeping like the big picture front and center, that none of this can work by itself. It needs to be connected to environment, to transportation, to jobs. So thank you so much for keeping that focus in mind. Elizabeth, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was thinking, Matt was talking about, selling products. And I think one of the things that we have to think about selling is kind of rebranding, or pushing the brand of the West Ward. And, Easton downtown has done that, by doing walking tours of the history, and the West Ward has just such incredibly diverse history, really interesting. I worked with Holly on doing a walking tour specifically on Jewish history, that did flow over into the West Ward. But in doing that and talking to people, it became very clear that there's a whole Lebanese history and Italian history, and that maybe one thing to help with getting people excited and the idea of kind of rebranding the West Ward would be at some of these events to do what the downtown does, which is to offer walking tours through the neighborhood, specifically talking about groups that historically have been in the neighborhood, as something that people could also do at these events that we eventually put on.
Definitely. When you said that community walks should acknowledge other groups, are you talking about Native American heritage? What are you making a reference about stolen land? Like, can we?
I just think there were a lot of different groups that lived in the West Ward that, there used to be a huge Jewish population there. There used to be a huge Italian population. There was a huge Lebanese population, and each of them brought their own history. And I think traditionally the African American community has been over on South Side more, but I could be wrong about that. So Native American as well. That's one I don't know. I know it more generally, and not specifically in the West Ward. But I think all of those groups, deserve their own kind of history tour, and it could get people really pumped up about how incredibly diverse and exciting this place was, the West Ward, not just downtown, the West Ward as a neighborhood.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you so much.
And yes to a haunted house cemetery walk tour, Brenda. That sounds awesome.
Amazing. Yes. Laura, you raise your hand. Oh, but you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I'm trying to better understand the money from, this grant and program. What are examples that it can specifically go to? Because we had talked about a space where we could create a community center. Maybe it can't go to something like that, but it would go to a nonprofit that was already created, right? To expand it. So is it more likely to go to programs that are already in existence and have ideas and need to expand, or does it also foster the starting up of certain programs that we could come up with?
Laura, so two pieces to that. So
Yeah.
that would be part of an implementation grant. And I believe it is a separate piece to an implementation grant that would focus on bringing additional pieces of these neighborhood and community related aspects to fruition.
Okay.
Regarding if it's existing or if you're helping to build it, that I'm not sure of. I think tossing it into the lap of GEDP, we would have to have something very set and very concrete and being able to say, yes, if we got this money, we can press play.
Right.
But if you wanted to bring it, I think that's the piece of it, is that they don't want to just lob $1 million out there. They want to see something that can be solid and happen. So I think the more that things are in a formation and have a plan to it, whether it's a business plan or whether it's, you have one or two people that are real strong partners in making it come to fruition. So I will use Lafayette just because it's low hanging fruit, but let's say you have Lafayette who's saying, yes, we will help make this come to being. I think that would be very helpful when you're going for a grant application, as opposed to saying, yes, we want to start to build this from scratch, but we don't have any groundwork done. So I think that's the piece.
So this program that we're working towards applying to, could it go towards like starting a murals program, like that's downtown? Is that the type of thing it could go towards, sort of?
Yeah, I actually think that a arts piece like that would be a smaller cost, so it could be rolled into part of this general like rebuild project. Just like community spaces that would be built in the new properties, that would be rolled into that initial grant. So because you're not talking $10 million to make something like that happen. Yeah, it's a much smaller ticket. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I'm just
You're
trying
welcome.
to better understand everything. That's really helpful.
And I have to say, Laura, I know we've touched on it in our larger our larger steering committee meetings about like this extra grant that's out there that we could apply for a bigger opportunity. So that's I don't know all the details to it, but yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I want to thank everybody for your participation in the first session of this working group meetings. We are at time, so thanks everybody for making this such a smooth conversation. We look forward to the next step, which is going to be identifying the projects according to priority. On the next meeting, we are going to discuss which ones are could we more easily implement, or could we see like the best and greatest use or the best and greatest impact in the community. And then on the last session, we will start working towards strategizing. So please, I want to invite all of you guys to stay connected, be on the lookout for a future calendar invite for the next event. If you give me 1 second, I am going to look on my calendar and I will tell you when is the next event. So please bear with me. Thanks for your patience. And without further ado, I want to be respectful of your time. We are good to go, and I will just tell you when is our next meeting. That most likely it's going to be February 24th. Right now it's scheduled at 3:30, but for some folks had concerns about the time being kind of complicated for people that have day jobs. So which time works best for you, 3:30, or is this time okay? And I see Jen raising her hand. No, she was not raising her hand. Okay. Colleen, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it would be awesome if you guys polled the community members and everybody else who would have liked to join the meeting and see what's the best time for us as community stakeholders.
Absolutely. Yes, I think that what's going next on the to-do list for us, the planning coordinators, is to look at all the names that we dropped on this meeting and try to find local connections and try to bring them to the table so that the next discussion can be even richer. So thank you so much for pointing out that, Colleen. So anyone else has closing remarks? I think that we are good to go then. Thanks, Brenda. Thanks, Rep. Freeman. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. Great seeing you and have a great evening. Stay warm.
Bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.